Hi everyone, welcome to Second Sunday with Stanford's Cantor Art Center and the Anderson Collection. We're so excited to have you join us for today's art activity. All right, let's get started. On screen is a video made at Stanford's Anderson Collection, looking at a close-up of an artwork by Martin Puryear, who is the artist we'll be inspired by today. We're so excited to have you here for our 30-minute long program. We'll be taking you through the art-making process. Now I'll introduce you to our Second Sunday team. We have Diane joining us today.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
We have Aubrey.
Hi, everyone.
We have Amy.
Happy Sunday.
And we have Nick.
Hello.
Let's get started.
The artist Martin Puryear works from many different traditions, including wood carving, joinery, and even boat building. As a young student, he studied birds and archery. He said, "If I became interested in archery, I made the bows and arrows. If I became interested in music, I made the guitar." He studied art in Sweden and at Yale University, also honing his woodworking skills by learning from builders and craftspeople all over the world, including in West Africa, where he studied the area's indigenous crafts while serving as a Peace Corps volunteer. With strong interests in culture, history, and nature, Puryear creates abstract sculptures, combining different materials, processes, and sizes, always keeping the viewer engaged in the space, scale, and texture of his art.
Okay, is everybody ready for some art making fun? We'll begin by finding some texture in the space around us. When you look at these pictures of Martin Puryear's work, try to imagine touching these sculptures. What would they feel like? Texture is the surface quality that can be seen and felt. Textures can be rough or smooth, soft or hard. Textures do not always feel the way they look. For example, a drawing of a porcupine may look prickly, but if you touch the drawing, the paper is still smooth. Okay, let's get started making art. Today we will experiment with texture by using an art technique called frottage. Frottage is from the French word frotter, to rub. It is a method of creation in which one takes a pencil or other drawing tool and makes a rubbing over a textured surface. The drawing can either be left as is or used as a basis for future drawings or collage. Here are the step-by-step instructions. First, you'll need some supplies: paper, crayons, pencil, scissors, glue, and tape. If you can find them all, that's great, but you don't need all of them to do the exercise. First, we'll find a texture. Look around you and gather things that have texture. If you place a flat object with texture underneath a sheet of white paper, you can make a rubbing of it with the side of your pencil or a crayon. Using the side of your crayon or pencil, rub back and forth across the paper, pressing hard enough to pick up the image of the object beneath the paper. Draw some shapes. You could turn your paper over and draw some shapes, or draw right on top of the frottage rubbings themselves. Cut out the shapes and place them on a new piece of paper or cardboard with the rubbing side up. Move them around and try out different arrangements before you decide where to glue the paper shapes. Arrange the shapes into a composition of your own choice. Make a 2D flat collage or a 3D sculpture mini gallery. The objects shown here have real texture that you can feel and are three-dimensional. The objects collected from around, these are objects I collected from around the house and show paper and crayon rubbings. The crayon on paper is smooth and is two-dimensional. After you gather your supplies on your workspace, search for things with surface texture. Look around your house or outside for things that you can make a rubbing on. Collect objects that are mostly flat and experiment by making rubbings on different surfaces. Make a full page of different rubbing textures. Draw some simple shapes on the paper over the rubbing with your pencil. Cut out the shape and arrange it on a new piece of paper or on a cardboard. And when you're happy with the arrangement, glue them down. If you want to make a sculpture gallery, you can tape one edge of the shape to a piece of cardboard so that it stands up. The crayon rubbings on paper give the illusion of texture, but the paper itself is flat and smooth. Frottage is a process of making art from rubbings. Frottage was developed by surrealist artist Max Ernst as a method of automatic drawing. What's the difference between form and shape? Forms are three-dimensional shapes. Shapes are two-dimensional and can be geometric, like squares and circles, or organic, like free-form natural shapes. Look at the organic forms that Martin Puryear uses. Can you create your own mini sculpture gallery using paper cutouts and shapes and frottage to show texture? This is a mini 3D gallery made by museum workers to help them plan a show featuring many Martin Puryear sculptures. You can make your own mini gallery as well as using your paper textures. Here's a picture of the artist looking over the show. You can see how tiny the sculptures are. These mini sculptures are called maquettes, and they are tiny models of artwork. There's a pen lying on the table in the center, and you can see that the pen is regular size and the sculptures are very tiny. Here we see a maquette of the largest sculpture Martin Puryear has ever made, and a mini person standing next to it. Also, here are two prints that Martin Puryear made. They look like drawings and show interesting texture on paper. I hope you're feeling inspired to create your own art gallery show of mini sculpture using some cardboard and your imagination. Add some mini people to show the scale of your artwork. And coming up, the Second Sunday crew will show how they made collages with frottage. Now here's Amy with some really big sculpture ideas from Martin Puryear and the Anderson collection.
Here we see our volunteer member and friend Pamela standing next to Dumb Luck in the galleries of the Anderson collection. Can you imagine standing in Pamela's shoes? Something that makes sculpture different from painting, drawing, or photography is space. You can walk through the space around the sculpture, viewing it from all different sides. On one side, you might see light pouring through the mesh of the sculpture. From another angle, you might not be able to see any light at all. One side of the sculpture is even a different material and color than the rest. Can you imagine what it would be like to walk around Dumb Luck? Puryear emphasizes craft and abstraction in his larger-than-life sculptures. And as you see, Pamela is standing next to lever number 4 at the Anderson collection, giving you an idea of just how large Puryear sculptures are. How does it feel to walk around a small sculpture? How does it feel to walk around a very large sculpture? Martin Puryear uses organic forms and natural materials to invite multiple interpretations that really encourage us to discover different cultural histories and hidden stories, including those from Black history in this country. In this interactive virtual session, museum educators will guide you in creating your own mixed media artwork, inspired by the minimal and abstract forms of Martin Puryear. This activity is inspired by these two amazing sculptures at the Anderson collection. If you're looking for even more inspiration, then please stay tuned to see some fun examples from the Second Sunday crew. And here you have Nick talking about his piece.
We're going to do frottage today, inspired by Martin Puryear. We're going to start by tracing a bunch of textures. Here I'm starting with a leaf, and I'm going to use a dark green for one, and then I'm going to switch to a light green for the other. Notice that it's capturing all the veins and edges of the relief. And then we're going to do a Lego block. What's nice about Lego is if you want to make a different shape with it, you can. Here we're just using a rectangle. And then we're using cardboard to get that stripy linear pattern. And then we're using blue for that. Oh, and we're using quarters. And we're going to use 5 quarters, and we're tracing them, or frotaging them, I should say, in pink. There are 5 quarters. And I took one out, and we're tracing 4 in orange. And what we're doing next, we're cutting them. That's what we're doing. We're cutting around the frottage. Look at me go. And we're cutting the Lego piece, and the cardboard piece, and the quarter pieces. Look at that, all those colors. And here we're going to make the background with the Lego. Look at that. Starting with yellow, moving to orange, and then red. Oh, and here we're making Puryear shapes. So there's one, and here's another. This one's going to have a space in the middle. And to cut out the space in the middle, we're going to fold it and then cut it. Boom! Look at that. And we're going to cut out the quarter rubbings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. But this one, I'm just going to keep them all together. Look at that. And now I'm going to glue them onto the background. This way we'll get a nice clean edge for all our shapes. What do I do with the leaves? We'll put one there. Oh, and I'm going to cut the other one in half. Whoop. Look at me go. 1 and 2 and done.
For today's project, I began by finding objects that were mostly flat and had some texture. I was able to find many objects outside, like leaves and rocks, but I also realized that I could use books. Book titles sometimes have some texture to them to make them stand out. At first, I decided to just try out the objects and see how they looked when they were rubbed onto my paper. The book cover came out great. I was able to read the full title, and the font looked really cool. I tried using the flower, but I couldn't get it flat enough to rub over, so I ended up moving on to the leaves. I had 3 different types of leaves. I tried all 3 and found that the really big leaf and the really small leaf ended up working well together. There was just so much texture to them that came out on my page. I also played around with 2 types of rocks, but I wasn't able to get much texture from either of them, although I did love their small shape on the page. After I tried out all my different objects, I chose to make another one as my final project. I started with the book cover in the center. I then began tracing the small leaf over and over again. I put it in different places on the page, used different colors, and even overlapped the design sometimes. I loved getting to see how even though I was only using 1 leaf, I was able to create a pattern with 8 leaves. It was just so cool. I could have stopped there, but I also wanted to use the large leaf. I decided to put it underneath the book title, and to me, it ended up looking like a feather. It was amazing how an object could look like something completely different when it was rubbed onto my page. It was so fun to be able to create a cool work of art, even though I didn't know what it would look like in the end. I hope that everyone else has a great time making too.
Hi everyone! To mimic the texture that Martin Puryear has in his artwork, I looked around for interesting surfaces I could do a rubbing on. Another fun word for the rubbing process is frottage. At first, I used the side of a crayon, but don't worry if you don't have one. You can also use a pencil, like I'm doing here. I found it helpful to move my paper around until I got a good angle when I was rubbing. Anything around you can be inspiration for your artwork. Here's another surface I thought would be unique because it has a big pattern on it. I really enjoyed the big movements I was doing with my hand. It helped me get warmed up. You can also overlap the rubbings, so don't be afraid to use the whole piece of paper or to use more colors of crayons. After I had all the different textures on my paper, I looked for items I liked the shape of. Then I drew those shapes on top of my paper. Here I'm looking at the shape of a cup from different angles. Then I was inspired by the shape of this drawer knob. Even puppies will see how much fun you're having and want to join in. After I drew my shapes, I cut them out with scissors. If your shape is in the middle of the page, a good technique to get to it is to cut a line from the edge of the paper. I also found it helpful to rotate my piece of paper while I cut. Then I could cut from some of my shapes. Some of my shapes were big and some were tiny. Here's a really small one that I'm cutting out right now. I also really liked the negative space that was left empty when I would finish cutting a shape. I might do something with the extra paper I have afterwards. Next up was one of my favorite parts of the project, arranging the shapes as if they were in a miniature gallery, as little versions of sculptures. I had pieces of tape that I would roll into a donut shape so that it was sticky on all sides. Then I would attach it to the back of my shape and stick it onto the piece of paper. If I liked a certain placement better, I moved it around. I loved how the shapes looked when they were placed on a blank piece of paper because my eye was drawn to the outline of the shape now that it had space around it. The texture also stood out more. Here's the finished version. I drew people next to the shape so that you could see the scale of how big the sculpture would be compared to a person. I also used my leftover piece of paper.
Hi again, everyone. Welcome back to Second Sunday Art History Storytime. Today, we'll be exploring one of the two works by Martin Puryear that inspired today's art project. Let's take a look at the piece. What do we see here? The first traits I notice are the scale of the sculpture, its color, and its form. Remember that scale is how big an artwork is. Do you remember the picture we saw before of Pamela standing next to it? It was taller than her. The piece must be at least 4 feet tall. The color is so interesting too. At first, I thought it was entirely black, but the piece has an entire side that's brown, like Amy pointed out before. The form or shape is pretty strange as well. To me, it kind of looks like a black boot that's been placed on its side with a handle on it. When I look at it, I get a little confused. I mean, what is this? We must be looking at a piece of abstract art because I've never seen a shape like this before. Maybe the object information can help us out. It says here that it's made out of wood, wire mesh, and tar. I guess I can see that, especially when I look at the colors. The wood is probably the brown that we see on one side, and the wire mesh and tar make up the black parts of the piece. The wire mesh and tar create the texture of this piece. When I think of wire mesh, I think of the strings on a tennis racket. It's filled with holes and it's easy to see through. But there are no holes here, right? It looks like a pretty solid object to me, and that's because of the tar. I bet Martin Puryear used tar to paint over the wire mesh to make it almost harder to see through. Can you imagine what it would feel like if we tried to use frottage with this piece? Rubbing over it with paper and pencil? It would make such an interesting pattern. Now, let's look at the title. It's called Dumb Luck. Do we know what dumb luck is? Dumb luck is when something good happens completely by chance, even when it wasn't planned or deserved. There could be so many reasons why Martin Puryear named this piece Dumb Luck. Maybe he was talking about the dumb luck of getting to see inside the sculpture. Or maybe he just decided that the name sounded good to him. But he could also be thinking about his position as an artist. During the time that Dumb Luck and Lever Number 4 were made, Martin Puryear worked to just be an artist. He didn't want his racial identity to play into the art that he made. Often, Black people do not just get to be something. People see their Blackness as so important that they can't be an artist or a writer or an American. They have to be a Black artist, a Black writer, a Black American. The same cannot be said for white artists, though, whose racial identity doesn't play into their work and life in the same way. And yet, Martin Puryear, maybe by skill or by dumb luck, was able to do this. He was able to just be an artist. He doesn't have to show the history of Black people or try to amend that history through his work. Instead, he gets to make art that confuses us, that makes us turn our heads sideways to see if it makes sense. He doesn't have to prove something with his art, he just gets to make it. Martin Puryear loves to make people think. What do you think about when you see this piece?
Martin Puryear is a very famous artist. You can learn more about him online. He is featured here in Art 21, one of our favorite places to learn about artists and artwork. Now we'll transition to our Q&A portion of the program. And I'll start out with a first question. This one will be for Amy from the Anderson collection. How does Martin Puryear make these sculptures and get them into the gallery?
That's a really good question, Mackenzie. A lot of people are probably wondering the same thing. Martin Puryear really likes to work with his hands, like you're all doing today with the activities. So a lot of what he does is on his own in his studio. For larger works, he works with other specialists from all over the world to help him build his very, very, very large pieces. So, lucky for the museum, we have an elevator that is the size of a small apartment in San Francisco. And this is how we get really large sculptures into the galleries.
Thank you so much. Would any of the panelists like to share about what they learned while doing this activity today?
I can go. I really loved getting to figure out how to incorporate books into what I was making. I really love to read, and I have so many books all around me and like all around this house, honestly. And so it was really cool to figure out a way to do art, doing art, which is so exciting and creative, and using something I love to do it was very fun. I also see that we have someone answered one of your questions, Mackenzie, and said that they really enjoyed your description of how to cut.
That's really great to hear. I know sometimes it can be tricky depending on the scissors you're working with and getting the right angle, especially if you're cutting out certain shapes. I also really liked Nick's technique where he had a shape inside of a shape. And so he folded the paper in order to kind of make a little cut in the middle. And then he used that in order to cut the inside shape out, which I thought was a really great technique as well.
Yeah. Someone else says that they really enjoy the spontaneity of the frottage. They enjoy how random it could be. Diane, do you want to speak about the frottage process and like why you wanted to do it for this project?
Yes, the frottage was actually suggested to me by the Anderson team, and I thought it was such a great idea because it responds to Martin Puryear's minimal style, as well as frottage was actually started by the Surrealists. So it is a very spontaneous way of creating art without really thinking about what you have to draw. You can actually do the rubbing and then see where it leads you. So it's process led, and it's really fun, and it's great for artist block. If you don't know what to draw, you can always take out your pencil and paper and do a frottage to get you started. As Aubrey or Mackenzie said earlier, it's a great way to warm up your art making day, and I just love it as an exercise. So thank you all for joining us in frottage, and keep going because it's unlimited, the possibilities.
Thank you so much. And then we have two more questions, which I think works because we have 2 more minutes. So another attendee asked, any insight on why the artist decided to use decided on the title for this piece? I imagine both for Dumb Luck and for Lever Number 4. I already gave my insights and I don't want to take up too much space. So does anyone else have any sort of idea on why maybe it was called Dumb Luck or Lever Number 4?
Aubrey, I think lever refers to his love of hand tools and tools in general. I think he focuses on using his hands and making things, and I think lever maybe has a double meaning, or it could have a double meaning for leverage and power, or for just a simple tool. And so I think he loves working with his hands like we do. And I think he loves his tools that help him make his artwork.
Definitely. And the last question is, how does the artist come up with the shapes he creates in his sculptures?
I can jump in on that one. As we know, Martin Puryear is very inspired by nature and boat building. And so if you think about the shape of a boat, you can think about the roundness, all the circular features, all the things that create depth. And if you look at a lot of his woodwork, he's making the wood into shapes that we wouldn't normally see. And I think that he's very inspired by all that's around him, including boats.
Just super helpful. Thank you so much. Okay, Mackenzie, do you want to lead us on?
I'll hop into the next slide and just want to say thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. Thank you to all the staff who was online, and that you can share your artwork with us. You can go onto Instagram and tag us with @CantorArts and @anderson.collection.stanford with the hashtag Second Sunday. And we look forward to seeing you next month, and look for this activity and more, including some more description about the materials and a bonus activity page on the museum's family programs page. And that's it for us. So just want to say thank you to everyone and goodbye from all of us here.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.